Today we're going to be talking about our second value, challenge.
What does the world of work need to be for the generations that are coming?
Why do you exist on behalf of the organisation?
Delivering it in a way has a good impact on whichever stakeholder.
You are the expert, so then you've got to let go of needing to be the expert in the room. Welcome back, nice to see you all. So today we're going to be talking about our second value, which is challenge, and why that's so important to us and how prevalent that is in the business world as we see it today. So Jo, we've got one of our values as challenge and start inspiring. Why did we choose that and why is it important to us?
Oh, wow. Challenge is important because that's essentially, for me anyway, the energy that comes behind change, making a difference, improving. We know that our aim is to make work for everybody. And to do that, you have to challenge the status quo. You have to say, this might be how we've always done this, but actually there's a better way. Or this might be how we've always done this, but actually the organisation was formed 20 years ago and the world of work was quite different then. What does the world of work need to be like for the generations that are coming and for the generations that are still here? And how can we make it better for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
So challenge is the cornerstone of making change happen, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's also the only way you grow. You have to challenge yourself. You have to challenge the organisation.
Yes.
And you definitely have to change. So change means we have to challenge ourselves to do exactly that. So it's all around us, challenge. None of us want to be in our comfort zone and in apathy for too long.
No. Well, we certainly don't.
No.
But of course, there are people in organisations that are happy to sit in that space. And actually, as leaders, we have to encourage people out of that zone because we want them in the performance zone, right?
Yeah, one way or another.
Way or another.
Challenge them out of...
out of apathy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the difficulty with challenge is it's uncomfortable. And people find it difficult. They don't like feeling uncomfortable. They don't like having to challenge other people. And we hear it time and time again, don't we? You think about even from our very most basic days of HR advising, you'd have a manager come to you and say, I've got someone in my team, they're really not performing. I really need them to no longer be in my team or certainly no longer performing in this way. And then you explore with them, what have you done? And actually what they've done is avoid all the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess today's episode is really thinking about how we lean into that tough stuff.
Yeah.
And let's face it, for our chief people officers that are listening in, or senior leaders, founders, CEOs, buckle up. It's only going to get tougher.
Yes.
And, of course we have to navigate how we do this in a way that is good for the people around us, good for our businesses. But finding that right way to lean into what's difficult, what's challenging, what's new, because there are the points we are growing, aren't they? Because that uncomfortable feeling is actually a time where I'm doing something that's outside of my own comfort zone for the good of.
It's a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad though that you said take some responsibility about how it's done, because when we do these podcasts, they can't serve everybody. There are some people that are very happy at challenging, right? Incredibly happy. In fact, feel like some of them do it just for the sake of doing it. And I love the radical candor model. Because I do believe we need to care enough to challenge directly. But caring enough means that we do it in a kind way. We don't avoid it. Avoiding it is not an option. None of us grow by avoiding the challenge. So we have to assume, yes, you have to challenge. And my preference would be you do that directly with people. It's not kind to do it any other way. But we care enough to do it in a way that is ethical and responsible, and leads to a good outcome, I guess, for the organisation and the individual.
Absolutely.
And that may also include at times, I was joking a little bit about, you change out of it. if this isn't the right environment for you to be the best version of you, then that actually might be the best feedback that somebody can give. And otherwise, you know, in that same model, we talk about we care enough about you, but we don't challenge or give you any feedback, and that being ruinous empathy. And that's what we see when you're saying, you know, leaders not giving individuals feedback, and therefore maybe the individual not even knowing that what they're doing isn't right, or worse than that, is having an adverse impact on the organisation, the clients, or other people within it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think it's not good for the leader themselves either, is it?
Never.
So it's not good for the organisation, it's not good for the individual, and it's not good for the leader.
Right.
And, you know, if you think about that from the team perspective, when your team sees a leader who's failing to deal with poor performance, poor behaviour, then why do I bother?
Right. So then it kind of snowballs.
Yeah.
Because we lose our culture in that, you know, it's so easy to lose our culture or lose our high performance behaviours because of allowing something that is the opposite of either of those things. Yeah.
And I think that the scenario of, you know, someone in the team to be managed is one facet. But of course, there's also challenging the other people on the senior leadership team, challenging the rest of the exec, challenging the board back. You know, there are lots of points in our roles where challenge is required. Yeah. And that can come at times with what feels like huge personal risk, depending what the challenge is. You know, if you think about a whole host of issues that you might want to raise as a CPO, for example, that might be really asking the people around that room to do something quite differently, think about a situation quite differently, not accept what has been accepted behaviours until now. But actually, if we want to be better and we want to create a great organisation where people thrive and do their best, and therefore we deliver for clients and we're enormously successful, that will come with challenge. Yeah. And our role as leaders, and particularly maybe I think about my role as a CPO, stepping into feeling that that's a really uncomfortable space.
Yeah. And actually you can be on your own, can't you? So we know from the research in the Leadership Capital report, a recent talk we did with LCAP, that the chief people officer role, the CHRO, whatever title you wear, is actually the one that probably feels that challenge the most. It's not the only. Of course, we all have challenge in all of our roles, not just senior roles, but that chief people officer role is likely to be the one that sees things very differently to the majority of the team sitting in the same room at the board meeting, at the exec table. So we're in that place where we're on our own.
Yeah, and it feels pretty lonely.
Something. How does it feel, and what advice can we give through that lens that we've seen work really well? And maybe even when we've messed it up, what did we do? How did we recover?
Oh yeah, wow. Okay, so I think some of it is obviously it's all situational, but depending where you are in your career journey, those things become easier with time and practice. Yes. So I think if I reflect back to my very first exec meetings, and you know, imposter syndrome was playing its best game, and I felt like if I were to challenge, everybody else knows what they're talking about, and I felt I didn't know. Then I'd definitely feel how it felt to be going through that challenge. So, you know, heart beating faster, probably a bit of a sweat, definitely red-faced, wanting to practice what I was going to say because I wanted to get it right. I've always taken my role, I was so seriously, well, it means I haven't had any fun, but the responsibility of my role relating to the hundreds or thousands of people that work for the organisation really seriously. Yeah. And so I know that my voice at that table is making a difference to how it feels to work for the organisation.
Yes.
And I think that's enormous.
Yes.
And so when you're holding that level of responsibility, I accept now, of course, isn't all mine to hold, but you are the voice, aren't you, that's trying to create change for people. And so I suppose some of the things that I found worked for me have been individually getting to know the people around around that room better, building a trusting relationship with each one of them, so that when I challenge in public in a executive meeting, they already know who I am, what I'm about, why I would be challenging, and that I only ever have the organisation and the people's interest at the heart of anything I do.
Yeah.
That I don't arrive with an ego. I don't create a fuss over every tiny thing. If I've got something to raise and I'm passionate about it, it'll be for good reason. So I think that individual piece is really important. I think there is something about practicing, having a mentor or a coach or somebody you can practice some of that stuff with.
Yeah.
Because when your heart's beating too fast and you know you've got something to say, before you know it, you've spat out your words, or you've not delivered it in a way that would do it justice. So I think there's something about practicing those things. And I think there's something about, if you tackle a subject once and don't get the response that you want, that it is not a once and done.
No.
That the reality is, if you believe it's the right thing to be doing, then you can keep coming back at it.
Yeah.
And you might not get what you needed to start with, but actually sometimes there's a longer game to play.
Yeah.
And you don't have to win every single battle that you go into.
Yeah. And I think, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, and we're talking about different levels of challenge as well, right? One might just be one-to-one, and even then, depending on the individual that you're going to be in front of and how you believe they're going to respond, depends how you feel about going and doing it, right? And quite often, like you say, that comes down to what's the relationship that me and that other individual already has, because the more trust we have, the more understanding of each other, the easier that is. But the best advice I got was also for the big things that really matter. Really think about it more strategically. Overused word perhaps, but who are the people I need to win over? What's the impact those, almost like a stakeholder analysis. So if I've got this challenge and I'm going to go into that meeting with those individuals, what are those individuals going to think about that? And why would that be important to them? And try and almost predetermine what's going to be said, so that I have rationale, I have a response, I'm credible in that. And maybe actually, if there are particularly loud or particularly influential individuals that are going to be, if we're talking about challenging in a team environment, maybe having a conversation with them earlier about it, and having a really useful discussion and including them in the kind of design or evolution of something, so that when you get into the room, they're already halfway there. Because I think sometimes it's about the surprise that people receive.
No one
from
likes
it.
a surprise, and also you don't get their best thinking in that sort of surprise environment either, do you?
No.
Which I think that is right, and I think them feeling like it's more of a co-creation than something you're trying to do to them. That's probably a really early reflection of mine. I can remember having a situation where a subject just came up out of the blue in a meeting. It was probably an early exec meeting for me. And it was just spiralling out of control. And it was, it was actually relatively easy to sort out, as it turns out. But as we know, when you find yourself in a hot topic type of conversation, people get excited about the subject. And before you know it, you're dealing with quite a difficult situation or difficult conversation. And I suppose I'd prided myself at that point in my career, or because I was trying to develop, not having to get my boss to kind of step in and, fight my battles or sort it out for me. And essentially that's what had to happen. And of course of course, did some reflection on how did it arrive here? Why do I feel like that about my boss having to step in anyway? Because sometimes that is what's needed. She was an executive member and I was only a visitor, if you like. So I think there's lots of things that you explore about yourself in those situations. But that's all part of the learning journey. And for everyone that's listening or tuning in today, you know, every leader around the table, every manager around the organisation has gone through the same learning journey that you're on or been through. And, you know, there's always an opportunity to reach out to somebody that's more experienced than you and say that this is what I experienced. How could I have handled this differently?
And I think it's lovely what you're saying is you can't do any type of challenge without it sometimes going wrong. You're probably not trying hard enough or not going in for it enough. If it's all plain sailing, actually, you're probably accepting the status quo. You know, certainly in a leadership role, there should be healthy challenge and debate. Otherwise you can't be doing the best that you can be doing on behalf of the people, on behalf of your clients, on behalf of the organisation. So, you know, really creating that environment. What I love is you talking about, you're really challenging yourself, which is, what did I learn there? What could I do differently? How could I get better next time? So challenge is all around us and we should embrace it.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And feeling okay with it. Being challenging. I think, you know, as you work more as a leadership team, whether that's, you know, exec leadership team or a functional leadership team, really building those trusting relationships, really practicing healthy conflict, being able to be good at, you know, because otherwise it feels a bit like artificial harmony, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, everyone's saying, yes, it's all good. You leave the room, right, that wasn't a bad day's work. I've come out unscathed. But actually, if nothing changes as a result of that interaction, then you didn't land your message, you didn't land change, you didn't move the organisation forward. And that's about holding the mirror up and reflecting on your part in that.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, there's challenge to yourself, there's challenge in just two individuals, which we talked about then, is about having a great relationship and understanding each other's why when you're coming. And I think that's really important as well. I learned really early on, I worked in quite a heavily unionised environment. And when I started there, it was always, if I win, you lose. And if you lose, I win. And I just wanted there to be a better way, because if you really kind of scraped that back a bit, the union were there for the same people that I was there for. They were our people, our team, and we wanted to do a great service for our clients. And the union were representing those same human beings. So I really wanted us to try and find a way where we could work together. And actually what we delivered on their behalf was better. I loved having the union there in the end, because they did make us better. They did. But we already aspired to be a great employer of choice anyway. So actually they became more of a kind of advisory committee working with us. And together we would constantly look for win-win. Like, what are your people telling you that you're representing? What does the organisation need? What do our customers need? What in that means that we can give everybody something that is good, without compromising on quality, cost, all of those other brilliant kind of healthy metrics that you have in an organisation. And we managed to do that rather than be constantly at kind of loggerheads together.
You lose a lot of energy in that space, don't you?
Absolutely.
So galvanising that energy for better progress has to be better.
Absolutely. And so where might be the win-win for you all in whatever conversation? And then when we talk about teams, and we can include this in the notes below, there's a lovely model for conflict resolution from Patrick Lencioni that we use a lot with teams, which is actually, in conflict, are you really getting to the root cause of the issue, which is normally quite objective. It doesn't need to be particularly emotional. There is something not working for a reason. Can we get curious about it? And he talks about the different layers that we end up arguing or having conflict at. And it's quite often not addressing what needs to be addressed. And even in your example where you said, your boss came in and it was quite simple in the end, probably in that meeting itself wasn't quite addressing what needed to do, because you had egos, or you had different functions who believed that this was right for them, and all these different complexities in the debate itself. And it's a really lovely tool to go, actually, what's going on here, and are we addressing the thing that really needs to be addressed quite objectively on behalf of the stakeholders that matter most. And I think as teams, when we do that with them, that's really helpful, because otherwise we almost can't penetrate to the real thing that's causing the root cause of the issue, and we stop and get messy. I think the other thing is about those behaviors, or maybe those values, cultural leadership principles that you hold in a team, in terms of how we will and won't behave with each other as we challenge. I am a huge fan of no work jokes. Like you can deliver, it's not easy, but you can deliver quite difficult conversations in a really nice way,
calm,
thoughtful way.
And it's those leaders, they stand out, don't they? The ones that are delivering it in a way that has a good impact on whichever stakeholder, and it is amazing when you see them at work, because they really do get results. So we're encouraged some leaning into that kind of uncomfortable space,
absolutely,
asking some questions then about why is that conflict happening. Is there a repetition? Am I seeing the same things happening? Is it my ego at play, or is somebody else's ego might be at play? Does the same people around the room always challenge everybody? So I've certainly experienced that, where you have, as you said right at the beginning, some people are just really happy to challenge and don't think about the impact that it's having. And also, I think when you are more senior, you might be chairing the meeting yourself, for example. Who are you not hearing from around the room? Whose voice might actually be incredibly powerful on this subject, but actually they're not stepping into the space. So how can we encourage people to lean in
and almost seek out that challenge? And certainly at an organisational level, even we've talked at team level, but at organisational level, if we are not challenging ourselves from the outside in, someone else is going to do it. So would you rather have the challenge internally, and challenge yourself about not being good enough for your clients, challenging yourself about there is a disruptor in the market coming our way? It takes courage. But actually, would you rather do that internally, or would you wait for it to come? And I don't think anyone wants that. So having that healthy challenge in an organisation, how do you encourage more?
It's got to be good for everyone, hasn't it? The organisation, the people in it, and the leaders.
Absolutely. What's not to love? So we've talked about a couple of things in summary. So radical candour and being Kim Scott, absolutely. Well, it's one of my favourite frameworks.
Yeah, me too.
Do you care enough to challenge directly? Even though you've got that belly swirl and that beating heart, and actually, if you've got all of those things, it's telling you it's a really important thing to be leaning into. We've got the Lencioni conflict resolution model that will pop in the notes as well. What else would you give our listeners as kind of that golden nugget?
So the other thing that's on my mind is Stephen Covey and his work around crucial conversations. I read this book probably at my first head of HR level. Actually, my boss at the time gave me a copy and said, I think you might find this really helpful. And I think there's a piece in there really about understanding those physiological things that are happening to you when you're going into a crucial conversation or conflict or whatever. So there's a bit about managing that, recognising that's a very normal physiological response to be having to something difficult, exactly as you just described. And then I suppose some top tips about how we might deal with those. So interestingly, we probably notice a few themes from some of the things we've talked about before. But there's a piece in his book about kind of 3 things that you can do. One is work on me first. So how I'm responding.
Yeah.
What am I experiencing? How do I guess, manage not outwardly showing that physiological response? And so I suppose a piece around just really managing that. I know I'm going to go into a crucial conversation. How can I reduce that? Yeah. What is it you want out of the conversation that you're going to have? It's an important conversation. What's the outcome you're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Probably also some piece around how's the other person going to respond? How might I answer some of those objections to what I'm going to talk about? But also, I think being prepared to do some listening, because actually you're only one part of whatever that issue is you're going in to talk about. So let's do some listening and not to take the sucker's choice. So, don't take an easy route.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you gone to have a crucial conversation and, I don't know, someone's either bailed or you've allowed them to chit chat for long enough so you're actually going to run out of time and you're basically avoiding having the conversation, so you're kind of taking sucker's choice.
Yeah.
So I think those bits are really helpful. And we can share a link to more details about his book.
He's written a couple of good books, hasn't
He
he?
has.
Because actually in his 7 habits, it's probably what I was talking about, is kind of that win-win.
Yeah.
But he also, one of the habits is seek to understand before being understood. So that listening piece that you talk about, incredibly important. And actually that's what happened with the union, really. I remember the pay deal that we went into, and obviously you have all the chitter chatter about like what's going to be asked for, and I would say before we would just lay something on the plate, and then whereas this time we didn't. We sought to understand, listen, and then understand what they really needed, and what was non-negotiable for them, and what they were really going to fight to now and do for, and actually it was far less than we'd anticipated, and we were able to actually give them a bit more because we weren't in the game of trying to screw anybody over and have big fights, which is what happens if you don't listen enough.
Of course.
Let me just keep giving you my opinion and you just keep giving me yours. Those things are crucial, aren't they, to have healthy conversations, difficult, challenging. I like what he calls it, crucial conversations.
Yeah, me too. I think it really resonates. So hopefully there's some helpful tips there for our community to take away.
And just lean in. You have to, if you're going to do the role of a leader and you really want the very best people, teams, organisation, healthy challenge is gonna be the way to grow.
Yeah, no, absolutely that.
Yeah, thanks, Jo.
So we've arrived at that point where we have a question from our community, our new slot that we introduced. So the question we've got this time is:
my experience working in my leadership team is we do not challenge each other well enough. What can we do to improve this?
Well,
we're laughing because we probably deal with that on a regular basis.
Yeah, a lot. I think this is probably the thing that happens the most in every single team, leadership team, deliverable team, every single team. I think that somehow we've arrived in a world where people think that having harmony, artificial or otherwise, is the where you're trying to get to.
Yes.
And it isn't.
No.
You want to be disruptive, you want to have challenge, you want to be able to have those difficult conversations, but you come out of it with everyone feeling okay.
Yeah.
Because you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas I think people think, oh, that was straightforward.
And do you think it's that, or do you think, and certainly I've experienced that with you and separately in the work that we do as leadership coaches, But I also wonder in this kind of social media world and cancelling that we've also got this inability to have really healthy, curious conversations and conflict, in that I either see we don't want to say anything for fear of retribution or public embarrassment, or we have the other end, which is I am going to have my opinion and this is right. And I am going to have my opinion and this is right. And our conversation happens to be, I'm going to keep telling you why I'm right and I'm going to keep telling you why I'm right, instead of actually really healthy, curious conversations where actually you might both be right.
Yeah.
And so forgetting who we're in, certainly in organisations, who are we in service of? Who are our stakeholders? And what's the right answer for them?
Yeah. Well, that's where that kind of conflict resolution stuff can help. So Lencioni's work with the conflict resolution model, because you're really understanding what's getting in the way of having the right conversation.
Yes.
And some of that in that example might be ego.
Yeah.
It might be, certainly at an executive level, everyone is experienced in their technical capability that they brought to the party originally.
Yes.
But actually, when you're in a leadership team, you should be lifting out of that functional expertise and doing what's right for the organisation.
Yeah.
Recognising that you might have the functional expertise to have an opinion, but actually by having the debate, you'll come out of it with a much better outcome.
Yes.
Than you would if you railroaded everybody else into what you think.
But it's hard, isn't it? Because you are the expert. So then you've got to let go of needing to be the expert in the room. And actually someone might, out of another function, have a better idea than you've presented.
Imagine.
And so, I think, and that's why, we would say this, but this is why we would recommend bringing in a leadership coach.
Yeah.
Almost like a facilitator, helping you guys to navigate the difficult conversations that might need to be happening, to help you really articulate what's the why for you as a whole team. Why do you exist on behalf of the organisation? What is the work that only you can do on behalf of the organisation? What behaviours, therefore, do you need to display with each other and for each other in the room? And digging into, I think you said in one of our previous podcasts, the elephant in the room, and helping you to really bring the elephant out, put it in the middle of the room, and really understand what's happening. And a coach can help you do that in a way that is non-emotive, or not completely non-emotive, but actually will help you navigate the emotions in the room, help you observe and maybe look at yourselves in a different way on the outskirts of what's actually happening, understand which bits of those are helpful for you, and actually which bits of those are really hindering your success as a team. And just, I've been on both sides. You have. I've been in the team that's got a leadership coach.
Same.
And sometimes you think, why do we have to pay someone to come in and do this for us? But we don't appear to be able to do it for ourselves. And now we are leadership coaches. And I can tell you from both seats now the value that holds, bringing someone in and helping your team become the highest performing, highest potential team. It has the capability of doing it. Athletes have coaches. The Olympic teams have coaches. They're high performers. So the highest performers bring in that extra sprinkle of pixie dust, if you like, to really elevate them to the level that they're so capable of achieving.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It doesn't mean you're not high performing.
Absolutely not.
It just means that you're prepared to be even better than you are today.
Absolutely.
And every person, every client that you have is relying on you being the best you can be. So
get a coach.
Thanks so much for your question. It's really great to hear from you. For members of the community who haven't asked a question yet and would like to, then drop us an email on hello@startinspiring.com.
We really look forward to hearing from you. Speak soon.